What's up, YouTubers? It's me, Johnny. I'm back in the States. Drinking some Scottish ale. It's a beautiful day here in Phoenix. It's not really hot, not really cold. It's about that time of year when everything's kind of perfect. It's March 3rd, so things are going to start heating up, I would guess. In my situation, I've been getting a lot of bad news. So it is what it is. Things are not turning out the way I had planned, but I'm going to do the best I can. Anyways, this video tonight is about the state of affairs in the world. One of my last video, not my last video, but a few videos ago, I was some guy in a golf cart. Anyways, a few weeks ago, I was making videos on what was going on in Canada, how the protests up there, the people who protested, a lot of them got doxxed. They got their donations returned, or they used the donations for other purposes. Ultimately, what I heard was the donations were returned, but before that, they were used for other purposes, which is, you would think, against the rule of law. The rule of law in Canada is now like U.S. in my opinion. And Canada was one of my favorite out-of-the-way places to go to buy real estate, to buy gold coins, to store gold coins, to do a lot of stuff. And as an English-speaking American, I realize a lot of people can say, oh, who cares about Canada? But for us, it's a great place to go, visit, do business, buy real estate, buy raw land, improve it, flip it, make a few bucks. Anyways, sorry for some of the sound effects. I'm in the back porch. And it was really just sad to hear that. So again, Canadians were getting their accounts either frozen, or the money they had sent to help these protesters was frozen or taken and then ultimately returned, I think. And now we're seeing this doxing happen in Ukraine and Russia. Let me be really clear. I'm not for this war. I'm not, I don't agree with it, with what's going on. But the reaction to it from the West is really bad, in my opinion. Just today, from someone I know, I got this in an email, so this is not like in the news. So just to put that out there, Ukrainians who have bank accounts in Ukraine, but the parent company or the company who owns the bank wasn't 100% Ukrainian, or they had a partial ownership in the Ukrainian bank, and if the said bank was in Russia, they took all those deposits. So Ukrainians who stored money in their own banks, who weren't wise or could read the minds of the officials, innocent victims in my opinion, just had their wealth stolen from them by the Ukrainian government to fund whatever they're going to fund, just because the parent company partially owns the bank, i.e. Russian banks. Now the reverse is happening to Russians. You might have seen in the press these yachts, and just for the record, I don't care about yacht owners getting their yachts taken, but there is a thing called the rule of law. So anyways, a few yacht owners who could get to Mauritius, I think, outside of Africa, if my geography is right. Just for the viewers, I'm in North America, and we're famous for not being very well read on geography. But I think Mauritius, and I might be pronouncing it wrong, is off of Africa. I might be wrong on that. But if they didn't get there, if they were in, I think the UK, Germany, and France have all announced they've seized yachts of wealthy people who have Russian surnames. So if in the past your idea was I'm going to buy a boat, put my gold on my boat, and leave, and you have the wrong nationality, your assets could be seized. But wait, there's more. Not to be a marketing jerk, but I gotta pour this beer. Thank you for bearing with me. Anyways, Malta, which I don't think is part of the EU, but I might be wrong. But Malta, whether they're part of the EU or independent of it, I don't know. But Malta has famously offered citizenship for people who pay a certain amount of money to get citizenship. If it's a white glove, I would say a white glove citizenship, like the ones in the Caribbean. They check you out, they verify your who you are, who you say you are. You're not a criminal. You're not wanted for anything. Well, Malta just suspended that opportunity for Russians, and I think Belarusians, but they might be Moldovians. So again, if you have the wrong nationality right now and there's a war or something happens, now again, these are extraordinary things. I don't expect this to happen in other Western countries, but nowadays you can't be sure. So you're a Russian, had nothing to do with the war, nothing to do with Putin. You now, if you have assets, cannot use them to apply for citizenship in Malta, which I think would give you a foothold into Europe. I think of Malta as more of a tax haven, so I'm not sure. I don't think it's part of the EU, but I might be wrong. These things are complicated as far as legal distinctions goes, and I don't claim to be a lawyer. These things are very, very distressing. It's why when some of the viewers ask me, why don't you go to Asia? Because ever since COVID, I've been worried there's going to be a kinetic war. Now there's starting to be a kinetic war, at least in Eastern Europe. And that could spread to Asia. That's why I prefer the Americas. I don't claim they're the best. Like, I don't claim like the Philippines is even the best. But there's some weird business opportunities there. I'll have to make a video on one time. It has nothing to do with the women, nothing to do with the climate. Just weird business opportunities where you can make a few bucks. Anyways, that's why right now when things are way they are, I stay in the Americas personally. I hope all this blows over, but it's looking like to me it's not. One more comment I want to make before I shut this video off. There is a good article in the Wall Street Journal. I was able to read it. It's behind a paywall, so I'm not going to post it. I don't know why I got behind the paywall. I didn't pay for it, but I think Reuters copied it. That's why it's out there. But there's a Reuters article, but I believe it was just a Wall Street Journal editorial. I could be wrong on that. But they had stated what should be known or should be obvious to the elites, but they were stating the reserve assets of governments now is not safe. Or here's what they said: it used to be sacred that you could commit all kinds of wars and criminal acts and your reserve assets were safe in the SWIFT system, which I'm not sure. That hasn't been true for a while. It hasn't been true for China. It hasn't been true for Iran. It hasn't been true for a lot of these African nations. So maybe this writer did not know that, or because he talked about that, or he or she, I can't remember who wrote it, has figured out that it's one thing to sanction like Iran, but another thing to sanction China and or Russia. Anyways, the point of the article was, if we keep doing this, we're incentivizing other nations to come up with other systems like SWIFT where they can use money that can't be sanctioned. First off, I think of gold, and then I think of Bitcoin. Gold can be seized if it's not in the right depository. They've written about that. Like, again, I'm not for Venezuela, but Venezuela had their gold stored in England. Venezuelans wanted their gold, or the government of Venezuela wanted their gold, and English chaps said, go pound sand, so they don't get to use it. Now, I think that's wrong, but then again, I don't expect the Venezuelan government to get that gold and to use it to help their people who are struggling. So I can understand that. Anyways, if you're an average guy or gal and you're out there now and you have the wrong passport or citizenship, you can be denied entry into countries right now. You can have your passport revoked or taken away based on some kind of act of war or something like that the West doesn't approve of. You can be a Russian film in, I think there's a Russian film in, I think the UK they took down. There's Russian artists, musicians, just average Russians having their accounts closed in foreign countries. In some cases, their assets are being seized. I think in foreign countries, their assets are not being seized, but I may be way off or wrong. But my point is, if you're Russian and you have nothing to do with the war, your assets are now being seized by governments, or frozen at least frozen. In Ukraine, the Ukrainians who are fighting the Russians, who just happen to have their money in banks owned partially by Russia or wholly by Russia, their accounts were just seized and taken. Their money probably will not be given back to them. And I think that's unfair, because how are you supposed to know? I can hear the comments, well, this and that and the other thing. Well, you're an average man or woman. You may not know. Almost all U.S. banks are probably owned by U.S. institutions, but there's a lot of U.S. banks that own foreign banks, and I don't know which banks they own. I wouldn't know who's on the poop list. So this is going to accelerate the rush into gold, I would imagine, and into Bitcoin. Now there's some blocks the Western governments can put up to stop people from buying Bitcoin, but they can't stop people from transacting in it peer to peer. But if you're a centralized exchange, they can do some damage. In that case, you better have friends and family in neutral countries who can, if you need certain cash transactions, do that. I say that because most people don't realize Coinbase, if you do a really large transaction on Coinbase, they won't always do it. Even if you're American citizen or in the UK, because I've known of people doing really large exchanges to get their money out to buy a house, they really put you through the ringer to prove you own that and it's your assets and all that. That is why there's a company, I won't name the company because I forget it right now. There's a company in Australia that Americans use to send their money into Australia. The Australian company verifies your identity and all that. It's not like totally private. And they do a background check and all that kind of stuff. And then you can do six-figure transfers and you get your money. How long services like that will last, I don't know. But that's why I always say there's law firms and there's firms like this firm in Australia that do these things. But how much longer they can do it for even Americans, I do not know. I don't know. Because I do know of Americans who have 6 or 7 figures that they send their Bitcoin to the Australian company. They get verified or their identity verified. And then they get the money wired back to their U.S. bank accounts. Because Coinbase many times will slow down the process, won't do the process, or will take a year to do the process. Okay, I have one more thing I want to talk about before I put this out. For those of you traveling to Mexico, Mexico is starting to get a lot of bad press. I saw this video by the Tangerine crew in Mexico. There's a couple in Mexico, they call them Tangerine or something like that. I can't remember. Well, the male part of that, or the guy part of that duo made a video about this German guy who got locked up for 6 days because he overstayed whatever his tourist card was, and how when he got to jail he couldn't tell anyone he was in jail. I mean, he couldn't call anyone. They only are allowed 2 calls a week to talk to the embassy of their country or their family, and all their wealth is taken from them, and they have to rely on what the guards give them. And it was very unpleasant, and it was all for overstaying. Now, a lot of people aren't going to be sympathetic. I will be, because as the Tangerine guy was auditing or commenting on the video this German guy made, he was pointing out it used to be you could overstay your visa for years on end, and Mexicans didn't do shit about it. Anyways, suffice it to say, what I'm learning is I was kind of right in how I was looking at it. Tangerine was saying that it's basically Cancun and Mexico City enforcing all of this. So it really depends where you enter the country, if you get it 180 days or not. And some people apparently are not looking to see how many days they are overstaying, and then the police pull them over, mostly in Cancun area, and then locking them up, and then ask them for bribes to get out of jail. And it's very, very shocking to hear about that. If I went through that, I would never go back to Mexico personally. I just came through Mexico. That didn't happen to me. But I always look at my tourist card to see how many days I have, and I leave the country. Okay, I'll be honest. I will tell you this. I've been in Mexico 2 or 3 months without a tourist card. I had my passport stamped, or I thought I did, but they couldn't read it, and I neglected to get the tourist card, because back then you didn't have to get all that. They would just let you in the country, and they still do. But normally, I'll just get a tourist card at another destination. I was in the country 3 months. I was leaving. They couldn't read the stamp or nothing, so I was lucky. They just re-stamped me in and stamped me out. That was it. Excuse me. Anyways, those days I think maybe are over, at least for a while. I don't know if this is payback because of what the West is doing to Mexico with all the immigration to the United States. I don't know if this is just a little mafia ring trying to get bribes from people by arresting them, putting them in jail or prison, and shaking them down for money to let them go. I just know you don't want to be stuck in a Mexican jail or prison and not let go, where you can't make any phone calls or only twice a week. And in this video, the guy said sometimes they would say the phones didn't work even if they did, so you couldn't call anyone. They made their lives miserable. They were laughing at them, making fun of them, which I'm not surprised. Anyways, the Tangerine guy commented on something that I think is really important. His wife had applied for a regular visa, like a what do you call it? Not a tourist visa, but like a residency visa. Here's what happened to his wife, girlfriend. I'm not sure. I think it's his girlfriend, not his wife. But anyways, his wife applied for the regular residency. They asked for a $1,200 bribe. They didn't want to pay it. And it took them over a year to get their papers processed. Over a year. As he said in the video, these things, once you fill all the paperwork, you do all that, it takes a few days or a few weeks. I mean, through the normal processing, you don't pay any bribes. What's my takeaway from that? Things are getting interesting, especially if you apply at the wrong office and you don't use a right lawyer or fixer or things like that. Because I've never heard of that happening in other parts of Mexico. That's why sometimes people give me a hard time because I'm not big on Merida. But the stuff happening in Merida in the Cancun area, if you're doing everything legal by the books, they're going to ask you for a lot of bribes. They might arrest. I've known both white people and black people been arrested. They got out of jail. They were in jail. They got out of jail, no problems. But they were shocked on what little they were arrested for. I tell people that's why I don't recommend you live in Merida. Now, if you're an older person, you have all your visa, your residency all worked out, okay, fine. But some of these young people, they're taking advantage of them, and I would be very cautious to go there. And my point would only be, once a lot of gringos and Europeans go to one area, it creates an opportunity for the police, the cartels to come together and harvest, their crop, so to speak. I'll just put it that way. This is really hard for me. I mean, it's distressful and hard to hear about this because Mexico hasn't really been like this for a long time. I mean, at least this out in the open about it. I think it might be related to what's going on with immigration there and the bureaucrats, not the president, but the bureaucrats kind of pissed off about how things are going. So now they're going to take it out on Germans and Americans. This guy was a German in jail. He got out after 6 days. He said he was lucky because someone smuggled in a phone and he could call the embassy. He said there's Americans in there for 6 months. He said Americans who call their embassy usually don't get as much help as Germans, and that's why they're in jail for 6 months. Just to let you know, I think all Americans who have realistic expectations know the U.S. Embassy does not help Americans that much, just so you know. But after this experience this German had, I would be surprised if he went back. I wouldn't blame him if he never went back. But it's why you got to be realistic about countries, and things are changing really, really fast. And it's getting to the point where regular normal travel as a tourist may be coming to an end, and easily getting a visa or a passport may be coming, a second passport, to an end. When I say visa, I mean a residency. I was listening to Nomad Capitalist, and I tend to agree with them. We could be, I'm probably overreacting, but we could be in the twilight of easily getting residency and second passports. You probably always be able to get them, but for average people, it sounds like it's going to be very, very much more difficult in the future because of all this stuff happening. And to me, this is the first was COVID, now this war. I don't think there's a conspiracy, but what I do believe is the powers that be, the elites, are using this as an opportunity to shut down their societies, seize some of their wealth through asset forfeiture laws, even though I'm sure in Russia they don't call it that, or in Ukraine they don't call it that. And in Ukraine, at least from what I've been reading in Ukraine, and it's hard to get really good information because a lot of this is just propaganda, but it appears to me it's getting harder to get out of that area. Putin, I read an article that Putin just said you can take less than $10,000 out of the country, but if it's more than $10,000, you're not allowed. I wonder how long that'll last. I wonder if that'll be enforced. My opinion, if you have $10,000 worth of assets and you report it when you're leaving the country, they're just going to take it. This is what I'm trying to get out. It's getting harder and harder to travel with your cash, your gold. You're going to have to use things like Bitcoin and just other strategies for larger amounts of money that don't include Bitcoin, but I won't go into that here. But the days of easily walking out with $50,000 or $100,000 in cash in your backpack, they could be coming to an end. And anyways, it just is what it is. These are the times we live in. And that's about all I really want to say. So I want to wish all my viewers a good evening. I'm not sure how long I'll be in the States. I have some major issues, legal and otherwise. Not me personally, but what my family's going through. Things are not going the way the legal documents would have led me to believe. And I'm not exactly shocked by that, but that's how it is nowadays. Me and my family are dealing with the repercussions of that. And I'm like a lot of people in the United States. I'm lucky I have a residency in other places. But as I'm back for 2 days in the United States, I'm starting to see, I won't comment on some of the stuff I've seen in the last 2 days in Arizona, but Arizona is one of the better states to be in my opinion, in the United States. But from what I've seen, if you have money and you're not getting it out, you could be making a mistake. I'll just put it that way. If you can afford to make a plan B in Asia or Latin America or wherever you want, you would be wise to do that, even if it's just putting a little bit of money in an offshore bank account in your own name, or an LLC or an SA corporation that's not in your name, because some of the legal things happening here in the States, you're going to have a hard time getting your money. That's all I'm going to say. You're going to have a hard time getting your money because the rule of law is even worse here than I would say Canada. That's it for now. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Thank you.